In this tutorial, I will be talk about how can we create NestJS framework for our application development. Okay, so first thing, when we start any NestJS framework based application, so firstly we need to set up Node.js environment because it is actually our compiler for our server side applications development, and who are already working with Express.js, they already know about this. And I think not only Express.js developer, I think Angular developer, React.js developer, every type of JavaScript developers are mostly working with Node.js platform. So here also Node.js platform is required to build our applications, and also you must have some knowledge about TypeScript, but in this tutorial I did not cover any TypeScript tutorials. So if you want to learn about TypeScript tutorials, so you can comment in this video tutorial series, and if I get so many comments about TypeScript tutorial, so definitely I will make TypeScript development tutorials for you. Okay, so let's start. So first thing, when we are actually start our application, so get documentations, actually press the documentation button, and after that we can go forward for this page, and after this page we can get some npm command, and this npm command is mostly necessary to install because npm install -g means global, and we need to be install this particular package install as a global basis. Okay, so when we are actually copy this particular thing, and after that I actually working with the VS code, and every type of developers mostly working with VS code. So if you did not know what is the VS code, so download link of this particular code editor. So this is the actually code.visualstudio.com. it is the actually this particular code editor I am using right now. If you want, so you can also use this particular code editor, and I think most of the software developers who are working with React, Angular, whatever JavaScript type framework you are using, so I think every type of developers mostly using this VS code editor. Okay, so right now I need to be install this particular command for our system, because when we have already Node.js platform for our system, so after that we must use this particular syntax. So if you don't know how can check the Node.js version, so you can use this particular thing, and if you check the versions in your system is available, so that means your system is enabled with the Node.js platform. Okay, and also we need to check another command npm-v, and it is the also node package manager, which is the actually package manager things which actually required with the Node.js applications and to manage third-party packages. So currently we are also need to be installed third-party packages through the command line process. So for that particular process we need to be use this particular command. Okay, so when we want to use particular package for our system as a global process, so for that purpose here I am using Mac operating system. So for this purpose we need to be use the root permissions for this particular system. Also when you working with Linux version, so there also you need to be use this particular syntax sudo. When you want to use Ubuntu system, so that time you can be root access with this particular syntax. Also different type of Linux distribution systems are available, and their root access permissions also different as per operating system. So it is actually basic things, and here I need to be use a root permission. So for that purpose I need to be use the sudo for this particular operating system, because I am using Mac operating system currently. So after using this we need to be use the root permission with the password. So after that we can be install this particular CLI process, because after installing this CLI process we can be get access this particular syntax which is the nest. Okay, so this is the nest is the our syntax, and this particular syntax need to be used to create our application. Okay, so when we are actually create the nest, and after that if we are press some nest, and then we can get so many commands after writing this particular syntax. Okay, and we can get so many options when I using this particular syntax. Okay, so right now we need to be create a new application. So when we want to create a new applications using the command line process, so that time we can be use nest new, and after that we can be create API app, because this time I just create a API based application first using NestJS. Okay, so step by step I will be create a applications which is actually needed for the enterprise application development. And after watching this tutorial series, you can be create any kind of applications easily. Okay, so here also I get some stuck. Actually I get some problem, because when I create this particular installation process, so after this process you may get this kind of problem. So this is the actually problem of dependency installations, because here I am not getting permissions actually. So to create node module folder, so for that reason this particular package installations are failed. Okay, so this is actually a problem. But if we want to set up this process, so here have so many processes are here. This time I just simply go to this particular directory and API app, and right now I change my directory into the API app. And after changing the directory, here I can use the sudo as a root permissions, and after that we can be use npm. Just I install here, and after install this installation process takes some time, because here have so many third-party libraries and packages are need to be installed. If you are working with the Angular or React.js development, so you already know about so many third-party packages are need to be installed when we are actually working with the Angular.js or React.js. So for that purpose we takes so many times to download the dependencies. So here also the same things. So this time my dependencies are already downloaded and node modules already come to here. Okay, so this is the actually basic installation process. But after installing this process, how can we start our applications actually? So you already working with React.js, Angular.js, so maybe you sometimes know about how can we start our applications and where we are actually getting the comments, how can we start our applications actually. So if we want to start our applications with the Node.js platform, so that time we firstly visited this particular file package.json, and this package.json actually is required basically where we are getting basic package informations. This package actually can be stored into the GitHub repositories, and that GitHub repositories could not be stored this particular node modules folder. So actually they want to optimize their storage process, so for that reason they did not want to store this particular dependencies module, because this dependencies modules already have into the GitHub location. So that GitHub locations actually managed by the npm command, where we are actually install the third-party packages through the command line process. And this is the dependencies. Here have two type of dependencies already are required. One is the dependencies which is actually required for applications when it running, and sometimes when we are actually develop our applications and we want to testing our applications or any other thing if we want, so that time we need to be use the dev dependencies. Dev dependencies is mostly required for the development purpose, but when we are actually create any real-time applications, so that time create and run our applications from the production version, so that time we are actually uses this particular dependencies for the production uses. Okay, so here is the dependencies which is actually required. But also we have so many things already here. So if we want to change any type of settings, so many settings from this section, but this time we did not touch any code or syntax, because this is very essential to know how can we manage our everything, then we can be touch it. Otherwise don't touch it, because if you are changes anything here, so maybe your applications will be distracted or your application will be destroyed. So never changes anything here currently, because this time we want to know how can start our application. So here I have so many actually comments are here. So this is the actually scripts. This particular scripts comments are actually start our application process through this particular syntaxes. Actually these syntaxes are actually aliases. It is not a actual syntaxes. Actual syntaxes are, this is the actually command line syntaxes are here, but this syntaxes are maybe sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's smaller. It depends on platform prospect. But if we are actually focused on this particular thing, so this is actually very smallest run command, and this command can be used easily for our application development or starting. So this time if we want to start our application, so that time we can use simple start. Okay, so this time if we are want to start our application, so simply I start our application through this particular command npm start, and when I create npm start, so after that our application is started. Okay, so our application is started, but where, how can we start our application? So if we want to check our application port and how can we open our application, so that time we can be go to the source folder, and after that we need to be go to the main.ts file, and in this ts file we can be see the app.listen. Here have port number 3000, which is the actually basic port of the express.js application. Also it is base port of the react.js application. Okay, so this time I just simply open our application with the localhost colon 3000. Okay, so this is actually our basic application which is actually started, and here we can see the output hello world. If you are seeing it smaller, so I just simply bigger than this syntax, this text format. And also if you are seeing this particular coding into the in my system, so just a little bit bigger my font size to see the clearly the process. Okay, so now here we want to change the some text here. Okay, so how can we change the text? So if you are have some knowledge about AngularJS, because this particular framework are inspired by Angular, so if you are already knowledge about Angular, so you must have knowledge about app module.ts. This app module.ts is the actually basic starting module where we are actually connecting all the classes and services providers, whatever we want to use our application. So we can connect all the application resources in the single module, and that single module can be delivered all the sub resources that particular modules into this particular main module, because this is the main.ts. This main.ts file actually started our application, and bootstrap actually a function, and in this functions actually we start our application, NestJS application. And this NestJS application actually creating as a async model, because this is the actually not async model, this is actually promise model. This is actually written some promise data types through this particular function, and for that purpose async and await are using here. So actually I never talk about basic in JavaScript or TypeScript, so for that reason I just simply talking with some basics what is actually this syntaxes. If you are beginner, then it will be very helpful for you, but it's necessity to understand for the every beginners who want to work with this particular framework. Okay, so these bootstrap functions are actually starting for the applications process. So this is the declarations process, and this is the calling process to start our application. Okay, so here is the app module, and this app module are actually imported from this particular class, and this particular class actually taking so many dependencies, sub dependencies for this particular modules. And here we have two type of classes are here. One is the controller, another is the services. So controller is the actually when you want to create any kind of URL path, so that particular path are managed by the controllers. And when you want to manage our data and databases, so many things actually want to behind the process which is actually connected with the database, so that type of processes actually uses for services. Okay, so these two things actually mainly working for our application. And this is very important to see, because when we are actually create any kind of routing system, so this time we did not record any kind of routing system directly, like Angular actually, because Angular have some routing process, but in NestJS we did not record any routing process because routing part are handled by the controllers mainly. And this similar things actually uses into the Spring Boot framework also. Okay, so if you are Spring Boot framework knowledge, so then you can be connect with this process, have some syntax differentiation, but so many things are similar like Spring Boot. But Spring Boot little bit harder because their typecasting is very hard to understand, and their dependencies management, so many things are actually very hard, which is actually very flexible in this particular framework. Because of this particular framework ultimately generate JavaScript syntaxes to deploy our applications. So for that reason, sometimes you can get some flexibilities for the JavaScript syntaxes. Okay, because this is actually based on JavaScript framework. So when we are actually created all the things through this particular structure, this particular structure actually are uses for the development purpose. But when we want to deploy our application, so that time we only deployed this particular dist folder for the server application. Okay, because you don't need to deploy whole codes to the server, because this particular source codes may be heavy into deployment. So for that particular time you can be deploy only dist folder for your app development or app deployment into the servers. Okay, so this particular syntaxes are converted with the normal and vanilla JavaScript. So this is the actually vanilla JavaScript syntaxes, which is actually very basic JavaScript because this is compiled code mostly, but this is actually our actual code, and this particular codes need to be understand, and we actually started our coding step by step through this process. So this is the controller, and these controllers are actually maintain our application routing system. And here we have some HTTP methods like @get, and so get is the get method where we can see the output. So this is actually get method. From the get method we can see the output hello world, but this hello world comes from the app service class, and there have get hello function. Okay, so this is the actually private read only app service is the app service are actually initiated in this particular syntaxes. Okay, so here is the app service class, and this app service class actually our service class, and where we can injected our data directly through this particular service class. Okay, so when we are actually injected our data through this process, and after that we are getting this particular message hello world. So in this hello world we can see it hello learner. So after changing this hello learner, but we did not see anything to change here. So if we want to see the change, so after that we need to be stop the process and restart the process, then you can be see the changes. So if we see this kind of changes repeatedly, so for this particular purpose we need to be use this particular syntax, which is the development purpose. So here we need to be use the start colon dev. So that means nest start minus minus watch. So we need to be when we are actually changes anything in our framework, so that time our application restarted automatically. So for that purpose we have this particular syntax. So how can we start this syntax? So when we want to start this particular syntax, so that time we can be use npm run start dev. Okay, so this is the actually syntax which can be used. So after using this we can see the hello learner, and now I want to replace with it hello world. Okay, so when it change, so after that we can be seen some refresh processing in this section, and also we have the change, we have to see the change. Okay, so this is actually very easiest way to changes the process. So now how can we create the API easily through this process? Okay, when we are actually create the JSON API with the NestJS or any type of framework, so with the NestJS framework basically we want to create the basic API process. So that time we can simply create the return this particular syntax. Okay, so when I use this return syntax with this particular messages, so then we can get the problem. So actually problem is for the typecasting, because here we get so many type restrictions with this particular process. So here we have two type of process, we can change it any, otherwise we can remove it. So if we are remove it, then we could not see any problem from this particular class, but we get some problem through the controller sections, because we did not get the any pass through the syntax controller process, because there are also type restrictions there. So if we have get the type restrictions, so we can use simply as any to approve the type process. Any kind of type can be forwarded through this process. Okay, so after this process we can see the output. Okay, so this is the actually API which actually get the output. Okay, so this is the basic thing which actually can be used. Okay, so this is the actually basic thing which I want to explain with you. How can we set up the installation process, and how can we create basic applications, and how can we manage our application process through the NestJS. So just simply I talk about these things into this particular video. In the next topic, in the next video, I will be discuss about how can we create API controller and extra modules for our application. Okay, so let's stay with me and see my all the tutorials which already have in my channel. You can see that tutorials, and you can also enjoy that tutorials, because there have so many informative topics about software development. I actually covered so many things in my YouTube channel. If you are new in my YouTube channel, so definitely subscribe my YouTube channel. And if you want to learn about anything, so you can put the comment to the comment section. And if you have any proposal, if you want to create any applications with me, so you can contact with me. You can get the contact information from the description box. You can be contact with me for the training purpose, for the software development purpose, whatever you want. So let's end this video. We'll be meet with you with the next learning video. And my next learning video, I will discuss about how can we create a module for our application. Okay.